I don't need to tell you that humanity started in Africa. But there are two parts of Africa that have remained very important and very curious for people to study. They are the two Nile, very important Nile. They are the Egyptian Nile, which is the river Nile, and the Niger Delta.
Your values are your values, the things that you take you wherever you are.
If I have to choose based on what, do I have value? What are even my value? When you look at people, what do you see in them that is making them being able to lead themselves?
One of the most important things I work on with people at the beginning is to help them understand the power of their stories. That's where their power in leadership lies.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Obehi podcast. I remain Obehi, your host here, and we're always happy to talk about storytelling because storytelling helps us to be able to differentiate what we are doing and, of course, help people to also connect to what we are doing in a better way. Because when we talk about story, we reveal who we are, and people are more interested in learning about who we are than just quoting number and statistics out there. So today, I have the honor of having a beautiful woman with me, Professor Laura. Please, could you start by telling the people who you are? Let's start from there.
Hello, everybody. My name's Laura Serrant. I'm a professor of community and public health nursing. In relation to my business, I am a leadership development and inclusive practice specialist. I am a mother, a grandmother, and a daughter, a sister, like many people here. So that's
That is
me.
beautiful. It's good to be a mother and a grandmother. You are seeing everything unfolding in front of you. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Could you share with us a little bit about your background? People want to learn more about you before they learn into what you do. That is important for us.
Okay. Well, I am the eldest daughter in a family of 7. My family are from Dominica, which is a small island in the Caribbean, and both my parents are from the same village, and I was one of the first in my family to go to university, and I did my ancestry last year actually to do the kind of genetic tracing, and found that a vast majority of my genetic material is actually Nigerian. So I think it came out as 49% Nigerian as the largest proportion of my kind of ancestry.
That's lovely. So, I mean, how does that really work? That is a conversation that we could have, and we could really spend a lot of time on that one time. Maybe not today, but sort of give us a preamble, kind of how do that work really?
Well, basically, there's a kind of well-established website and company called ancestry.com, and you can apply to them, and they send you a little pack, and you send a sample of your spit, your saliva, and then from that they can actually do a genetic profile trace of what are the genes that are in your system, if you know what I mean. So it tells you things like parts of the world and the percentage of your genetic material that come from different parts of the world. So, for example, for myself, it shows various different parts of Africa. It also shows some Western Europe. It shows different percentages, and it starts with the highest percentage, and then it shows the lowest percentage, and then you get a little map which identifies the parts of the world where your genes kind of have come from, in obviously your ancestors generations and generations back. So it's an interesting thing. It also, if other people do it, it also identifies people in the database who are connected to you by a familial link, and it will say like first cousin, second cousin. If you have actually, you share some genetic material, which, as you can imagine, with stories of migration, particularly in and other diasporas as well, is quite interesting to learn about yourself and where you come from. for me, you know, with the, I suppose, the history of the island that my family come from, it has an atypical history from compared to other larger islands of the Caribbean. So it doesn't have a huge, um, if you like, plantation history or the traditional huge slave trade history in the same way as you would find it in some of the other bigger islands like, Jamaica, Barbados, etc. So it's got a, it was interesting for me to find out, because if I go back 6, 7, 8 generations within my family, they are based within the same small island and the same village almost. So yeah.
All right, like I said, this ancestry thing is something that we really need to explore because
Mm,
it's particularly important for the demography that we are focusing on, which is the African diaspora.
yeah.
It's a conversation
Hmm.
that is well involved. You were
Yeah.
talking of the ancestry.com, and of course, there are many other organizations that are talking about
Yeah.
this, which of course I know of. So
Yes.
I'm curious. I'm curious now. Uh,
What's interesting, let me just tell you a bit. What is very interesting is I was given a talk in my business. I do professional speaking, and I was speaking in Ireland to a group of nurses who trained in Africa and other countries, predominantly African nurses, but not exclusively. I'll give them a talk to them around leadership and development and things like that. And actually, this was before I'd um, had the results of the ancestry, the genetic thing. And one of the nurses who was there, who said to me, "You really look Nigerian." I've never been to Nigeria, so it's not, you really look Nigerian. Are you Nigerian? I said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "I'm sent this thing, I'll see." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "There are people walking around in Nigeria who look just like you," which was interesting for it to then come out. And I have a very good friend who is a Nigerian nurse. I've known her for many, many years. So when I finally got the results and I said to her, she said, "I knew you belonged to us. I knew you. I knew you were ours," which is always interesting. Yeah.
Really interesting, really interesting. Nigeria is a very populous country, and
Mm,
it'll be a land where you have a lot of population in the whole of human history. And of course, now I
hmm.
don't need to tell you, you are a professor. I don't need to tell you that humanity started in Africa.
Absolutely.
And you
Yes.
also know that Africa is a piece of land. It's not like
Yes.
Europe or
No.
what you will have is some other places where you have so many fragmented pieces. Africa is a compact land, which means there is
Yeah.
nothing stopping the migration from north to south, east to west. So our
Yes.
ancestors have moved around across the length and breadth of the
Yes.
countryside of the different part of the
Yes.
continent.
Well,
But
as I've said, yeah.
yeah, but there are two parts of Africa that have remained very important and very curious for people to study. They are the two Nile, very important Nile. They are the Egyptian Nile, which is the river Nile, and the Niger Delta, the deltas of Nigeria. That is where you have the Nigeria, of course. And now, it's not also a rocket science for somebody to understand where these are one of the most, these are some of the two most populous countries in the entire human history,
Hmm.
because it has been because of agriculture, because agriculture was the first instrument that developed a society, because people need to
Hmm.
settle because of food. And because they
Yes.
are both deltas, meaning that their sedimentation are coming from the rest part of the continent and they are going to this area. So agriculture just naturally developed in those areas. So they attract more people because people migrate because they want to see where to live and to survive. So for this reason, Nigeria, or the area that you have Nigeria, have always have a high population density, and the same is true
Hmm.
also in the Nile Delta and the rest of it. So sorry, I was just try. I'm curious. All right. Now, the question I actually wanted to ask you there is that when you say you have like I don't know how many percentage you say you have of Nigeria, then you also have some percentage of Western European or Eastern European.
Yeah.
Is that a percentage in the sense of what is the makeup of who you are, or a probability of where your ancestor might have come from?
It's a makeup of my genetic profile. So if you look at, what they look at is your genetic profile. So they can't say you came from this city or that city, but what they look at is how your genes are made up. And then it looks at which areas of the world you would also find people with the same genetic combination. So let's say very simply, let's say we looked at genetic combinations as colored beads, because you know that the your genes look like a string of beads. That's the easiest way to describe them. Let's say they can say, well, I've got 4 red beads, I've got 2 yellow beads, I've got 3 purple beads, I've got four, a couple of black beads, etc. And what they can say is most people who have 4 red beads in their combination would come from Nigeria. Those people who have 2, 3 purple ones tend to come from Scotland or wherever it happens to be. And that's how so it's looking at the makeup of your genetic material, what's actually inside your body. Because obviously, as you go through generations, as people mix together and change, and like you say, migrate and move around, even within a country, you can say there'll be certain beads that belong to Nigeria. There'll be beads. One of the other populations that's in mind is Southern Bantu people. They will have a different colored bead combination. And so that's really how they do it.
Mm.
That's the simplest way I can describe it.
Yeah, for my ignorant me, I would think that is a kind of a probability of where you will be coming from. Because now, hmm, how do I?
Well, what they're
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah.
is that where your people who have a similar
Mm.
genetic profile to you come from, because genetics is all about kind of combinations of different combinations of genes. That's what it is, and your genotype is what is below the cell level. It's in every cell of my body has that same combination. Yeah. And each individual's genetic profile is slightly different. Even identical twins don't have exactly the same genetic profile. So, and then the without getting too technical, that's your genotype. Your phenotype
Mhm.
is what that looks like. So what you look like when you look at yourself. So for example, this combination of genes in this particular way are more common in one part of the world. And therefore people from that part of the world tend to they have a very similar, there are combinations of features that you would find, and that's things like your skin color, your eye shape, your eye color, your lip shape, your nose shape, the ears, you know things like that. So irrespective of where you live, so therefore if you then migrate and move to somewhere else, you don't suddenly start looking completely different to someone else. So when we talk about in everyday language and we say, oh, that person looks, like my friend said, you look like people I know, it doesn't matter that for 10, 12, 13, 14, 20, 100 generations, let's say, no one in my family has lived in that area. The part of your genes are carried forward with you wherever you are.
All right. We're going to leave it there, but I can guarantee you
Oh, sorry, that
we'll come
yes,
back
we've
from.
gone into a whole other thing.
We're going to talk about this again. I remember there was this film that I watched a couple of years ago. I think it was a research, kind of research film that was done by Americans. I think it was called Mother Eve or something, where they were researching about the genetic code of humanity.
Mm,
Of course, everything is
yes,
traced back to Africa, and that is a common sense
yeah,
anyway. Then there was this professor, I think her name is Rebecca Kam, if I'm not mistaken, who was saying that it would take an African who's coming to Europe about 20,000 years to completely change from the African phenotype. Okay, let's use the right word for it now,
yeah,
because it doesn't really change the code, but it change the appearance, no? To change from an African appearance to a European appearance, which is basically you now metamorphosing. You are changing in response to where you live, your environment. It will take about 20,000 years. So I said, well, that is a data that is worthy of evaluating, worthy of of
Yeah,
understanding.
because it's built into you. But the other thing is that it's not just, people adapt as well. We are human beings. We are adaptable. That's what we do, and we adapt over long periods of time. So, if you think about some of your genetic material is always carried forward, you know, and some genes are dominant and some genes are recessive. It takes a long time for a gene to completely disappear from your chain, if you like. This is not a overnight thing. And so that's the reason why. And your genes determine what you look like. Yes. So therefore you can see how it takes so long for your features to change. And even sometimes, and hence the diversity of how people may look. So someone, and particularly if we go back to the stories of belonging that happen across the world, not just in Africa but across the world, people, but particularly we've seen in periods of history where there has been segregation of people depending on how they look or how they feel, or even in families sometimes of how people look, what we think is better or worse, etc. These things change. And so, but if you look at the genetic level of each person, no matter what they may look like on the outside, the genetics don't change that quickly. So hence, we have famous case. I mean, there's a program I watched just the other day about Sandra Lang, who, is famously known within South Africa during apartheid of being a woman who looked, who externally her vision was that she looked, and of course that is the difference is that actually when you looked at her genetics were actually, very similar to her parents in 90% or a large proportion. But like you say, there was an element in the history going back that was even unknown to them that came through in her. So it's not as simple as, the change takes many generations for those kind of changes to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, I'm going to have to beg you to come back for it again. We're going to talk about that. It's important. I'm sure
Okay.
we cannot even finish it in 2 episodes because that is deep conversation. Talking about data,
Oh yeah,
talking
definitely.
about
Many
the human vegetable.
the human vegetable. And actually, this is the thing about when you talk about stories, and stories of self. There are some stories that are, of the experiences, etc. And there are some stories that get lost in history, but there are also some stories that come back. The human body is, a great keeper of stories, is probably the way I would describe it. There's a book, and it escapes me who wrote the book, but there's a book called "The Body Keeps Count" or "The Body Keeps Score." And that actually is, so in many ways, we can tell stories about how we live our lives. We can tell stories about, what we do that's different, how we are not doing something, but the body always keeps score.
Yeah.
And then for me, from my kind of my nursing background, people can tell you, oh yes, nurse, I did this. No, I haven't been doing that, but the body always keeps the score.
There is a saying in my place. Okay, I'm from Nigeria. I'm from the south of Nigeria, from a people called Urumi. So our language
Mhm.
is called Esan from Edo State. So it is said that ono sivin owale ekivion sesin udole ekivion sesin. Basically, it's saying that if you to crack the kernel, kernel, palm kernel.
Yeah,
If you are the one that is cracking the palm kernel, sometimes you might lose count how many you have cracked. But the stone that is cracking it can never lose count because it's cracking it. So the
yeah,
body cannot hide this. The secret, everything is there. So I want
yes,
to really tend to believe that is the way it is. That the
yes,
information is in the body because that again is data. Is containing the
yes,
information. It is
absolutely.
sometimes we don't have the possibility of able to read it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have many ways in which, in societies, that we try and make sense of it. We say, oh, that was a throwback. Oh, that was, like the, and it's just another way of saying that it is within our history. It's within the story of us. It's within the story of who we are, where we came from, and also where we're going. Because also the body tells future stories as well. It doesn't just tell stories of the past.
I'm happy you're mentioning story, because that is fundamentally important for us, fundamentally
Mhm.
important for who we are. And of course, again, here we're talking about storytelling. But now let's talk a little bit about, tell me what you do exactly.
What I do exactly. Okay. Right. Well, I run my own business, which is around leadership development and strategic practice. And inclusive practice. What that means is I work with leaders and with organizations to help them to strategically deliver their business for impact. So that might mean, for example, if we think about it, our careers, it, often we get promoted to be managers or leaders because we're very good at the job that we did. So, for example, if we're a very good nurse, we're a very good accountant, we're a very good trainer or teacher, we get promoted to be, into to be lead other people in those areas of work. The problem is that we are promoted into jobs that we were not then trained to do. So many people are very good operational managers, making sure the tasks get done, making sure that things are completed on time, but they're not really experienced to do this strategically. So they can't really necessarily, or find it very difficult to set the direction, to work at a strategic board level rather than a work operationally. So they're the people and the organizations I work with. Alongside that, people want to make the best use of all the resources they have, and that's usually the people that they have. So, part of development is around making sure we attract the right leaders, that we keep the right leaders, we keep them well, and we actually get them to deliver the business impact that we want. And that's all about people. It's all about how we manage the people in order to get the best use of the resources that we have.
All right. And how do we attract the right people? That's sort of in line with what we
Okay.
do here now, which is
Hmm.
using the power of storytelling to attract the right, or we call it the ideal client. And I say this quite some time to some people,
Hmm.
that when you tell story in the Nigeria colloquial, you involve yourself. You
Yes.
involve yourself in the sense that now you now have a face. Now you can be aimed at both for positive or for negative side of the story, depending on how you want to look at it. But I
Yes.
say that is a good thing. It means those that you are trying to attract will find you easy to resonate with you, and therefore be
Hmm.
attracted to you, because they say light attract light. You know,
Yes.
so in that
Yes.
sense, we are really passionate about the idea that you should open your mouth so that you can attract the right energy to yourself.
Yes.
Okay, that is on the side of the
Absolutely.
storytelling. But in this area now, you are talking about leadership, attracting the right people, and you also say retaining the right people. Tell me about the
Yes.
attraction. How do you do that?
Well, part of attracting the right people is absolutely being clear about what you're attracting, where you're traveling with them. Because when someone comes to work with your work for you, you are become a period of time in their career history. So part of attracting the right people is actually having a clear strategic idea about what it is you're trying to achieve, because no one person is right in and of themselves. It's the right person to help you to get to where you need to go to. Yeah. So you have to be clear about where you are journeying to in your business or in your work or in yourself. And so therefore it's, if I'm going to get to this place, or if I'm going to reach this height, or I'm going to deliver this kind of service, okay, or have this kind of organization, what are the mindset, the skill sets, and the habits that people need to have to help me get to that place? And that's where, so it's almost that, like Stephen Covey says, beginning with the end in mind. You have to have a sense of where you're going in order to choose the right people, to understand what kind of skills they need, to understand what kind of environment you need to create to keep them, and also to make sure that they're able to deliver the impact in your work or your business or your profession that you actually want. There's a phrase, I like stories and I like, people, what people say, because I find that they stick with me better. Maybe it's the Nigerian in me, who knows? Anyway, and there's something saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there.
With me, you are lost, no?
Yeah, yeah.
That's so good. I
If
love
you
that.
don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there.
Because you're basically jumping on every part of the road. You think that is the
You're
right.
just jumping on every part, every part. You're jumping on every wagon that's passing, and actually, the wagons are not going in the right direction or at the right speed or in the right way. So, because sometimes it's not just the destination. Part of where we're journeying to is not just about where we're going to end up, but how we travel. How we travel.
That's very
And I
important.
think often what we do when we set targets and when we set KPIs or things like that, we're sometimes very obsessed with the end point destination.
Okay, let's look at that for a moment. Let's look at that for a moment.
Hmm.
You said looking at the end in mind. And what that is
Yes,
making me,
beginning with in
yeah,
mind.
beginning with the end in mind. What that is reminding me is the importance of setting goals so that now you know what you are, where
Yeah,
you are going. You have a blinder. Not
yeah,
everything is important. Not everything is relevant. Not everything is going to attract your attention because you have a blinder. You have decided that I have certain energy and I'm going to spend it on this direction. Because if I spend
yes,
it everywhere, I'm going to, I will have no energy anymore.
no, no,
So, how do we actually make this blinder? Because now, by the time you set your goal, it means you are, okay, in economy, there is what they call opportunity cost. If
yes,
you have opportunity cost, mean you also have a scale of preference, meaning you have a choice. You're having a choice to say that I cannot take all.
absolutely,
I'm taking this one. I'm
exactly.
going to fulfill
Yeah,
every other thing. How
yes.
do we do that? And why is that even important in the field of business?
It's really, really important, and that's the difference between strategic leadership and operational management. Strategic leadership is about putting your efforts and utilizing the resources that you have towards a clear set output and traveling, getting to that place in a way that's in line with your values and the way in which you want to operate. That's what strategic decision making is about. Because what that allows you to do, just as you said, Obi, is that what it allows you to do is to make a informed choice and use something that we call discernment. And discernment is about being able to use the evidence, the data, the information that you have, and make a judgment as to whether something will help you move towards where you want to go or not. That doesn't mean that you have to follow every single thing just because it helps you towards your goal. And it doesn't mean that you reject anything that doesn't. What it means is that you're able to make an informed decision, and you can knowingly choose to do something or knowingly choose not to do something. And that's really how it is. So it determines not just whether you get there, how quickly you get there, but it also determines how you are on the journey. Are we moving fast? Are we moving slow? Are we taking our time? Are we taking other things as we go along? If we are diverting off the path, how long are we diverting for? And what are the consequences of that? So you are purposeful and consistent in your decision making.
Okay, you were talking about strategy. Strategy.
Yes,
And you
strategy.
were adding also leadership to that. And these are
Yeah,
things now,
strategic leadership.
yeah. These are the key words now that people use in business. they throw it
Hmm.
around a lot. Could you
Yeah,
expand
but they
more?
don't always know what it is. That's where I come in.
The-
They know what they want, but they don't know how to do
yeah,
it.
please help us to get this picture clearer. Once for once.
Okay. Strategic leadership means having a clear, so I suppose starting from where you are, so starting from yourself as human and your own value base, okay, having a clear sense of all the resources available to you, both within yourself and within your team, and using those resources, your own and those within your team or your connections or your partnerships, purposefully and consistently towards reaching an identified outcome or goal. And then nurturing the connections, the partnerships, the networks required to help you achieve your goal, but also to do it in line with your values.
Thank you so much for that. Now, is it possible, Professor Laura, that at a point you were this strategic about your work that you also had to learn? Share with
Absolutely.
us.
Let's go back to what you said about stories. Okay. One of the reasons that I focus on this in my business is because I am what I call an expert by experience as well. So, I have been working in a professional space for over 40 years. And you're meeting me now, but you didn't meet me 40 years ago, where I was chasing every rainbow, following every butterfly that passed. I was very busy. I was a very excellent professional, and I was very task orientated. My tasks were completed, they were completed on time, and they were done well. I was proud of that. But I was exhausted because I was either trying to just work out, how do I do this? I was so task focused that I wasn't being strategic. And that's where often burnout comes. That's where people feel that they are running to catch themselves up, that they are a day late and a dollar short, that there's never enough time for them to do what they want to do. And so, the one thing that you did say that's really important here for people to understand is every single person on this earth has 168 hours in a week. Nobody has an hour more and no one has an hour less. And in those 168 hours is to do everything you have to do, to sleep, to eat, to care for people who care for you, to go shopping, to do your work. There's no more time. No more time. So that means that if we say on average people might sleep 7 hours a night, yes, average. So that's 49 of those hours you are asleep. So that brings you down to 112 hours. Yeah. So the actual time you have is finite. So you can do anything in those hours, but you can't do everything. So that's the thing that occurred to me over my decades of working. So that's why we need to be strategic and make decisions about how we are going to use the precious resource of time that we have. Now, for anybody listening and for yourself, think about of those hours when you are not asleep, how many of your hours are you using for work? How many of your hours are you eating? How many hours are you using with your family and friends and people that are important to you? And if you think about the balance of those hours, are you then living the lifestyle that you really want to be living at this point in your life? And if the answer is no, and often with people as we go through our careers and we build businesses and we work with our organizations, the work element takes a lot more time than we would like to take. We're not going to, if we want to spend more time with our families, more time doing things we enjoy, we can't create more time. What we have to do is create more space. And so that's what happens is that we look at how we can strategically lead ourselves in our workspace, in our home space, etc., so that the balance is much more reflective of the kind of life we want to lead.
All right.
And my experience is that's what I've learned to do um, over a period of time, and it's backed up by my research, um, my business framework, which is called the Lioness Effect, is built on 30 years of research. You know, it's both built on my doctoral research. It's built out of that, and this is about not just what we do, but how we actually take charge and lead strategically for business impact, or for the impact. And it might not be business in terms of a company, it might be the job role you do, it might even be about leading yourself
I love that.
in this space.
Leading yourself. I
Yeah,
love that.
not being led, leading yourself.
I'm thinking, is it possible that something could have pushed you into doing these things, into helping people to refine their leadership skills, to even consider the question of leadership at all? Because any person
Yes,
within the African diaspora will agree with me. Okay, every conscious person will agree with me that that leadership is very important for us, but also
yes.
in Africa.
Yeah, I think both is really important. This year, in May, I did one of my first business visits to Africa, and I visited Uganda. I had a fabulous time there. And one of the things that I learned was the importance of leadership wherever we are. When you are a member of as myself, of the diaspora, and you live in a different country, where you are your phenotype, people who look like you, walk like you, talk like you, are not the majority, should I say? Then a lot of your experience, a lot of my experience, is being what I call the first one, the only one, or the other one in a space. And so the patterns of leadership that I've experienced through my career um, are not always done in the way that I would want to do them, the things that are important to me, or in terms of my culture or my values or my way of being. So I've learned to navigate those spaces in that way. But when I visited Africa, and when I work with other countries where people do look like me mainly, um, there's still a thing around leadership within country, because it's about challenging sometimes the expectations of where people expect you to be. And it might be because of your background, it might be because of your education, it might be because of your family name, it might be because of your caste, your clan, your group, your gender, it could be anything. But actually, it's even more important, I think, that we see the importance of leading ourselves, because we all have a vast element of resources. And if we're going to provide, if you like, a different way of thinking about leadership, and a counter narrative, an opposite narrative to what you would expect, then actually we have to be intentional and consistent in how we think about leadership and how we demonstrate or evidence our leadership in our work.
Because you were talking about value before, and you were also talking about intentionality, because that is about talking
Hmm.
about fit-free now, and that you're not just taking everything, But somebody might be
Yes.
wondering, if I have to choose based on what? Do I have value? What are even my value? On the basis of what should somebody be strategic, maybe in business or
Okay.
wherever?
Well, it's probably the easiest way to think about it is your values are your values, the things that you take you wherever you are. Okay, so there is work. So, for example, in my framework, the first part of that about being human is I spend a lot of time with people working out, okay, so what's your value base? Because you come to work or your business or your education as your whole self. You don't have another set of values that you use at work and another set of values you use at home. You are as you are. And that's the foundation on which your actions, how you do your actions, are built. But ultimately, building your leadership is based on where you are going. So there's again, it's saying, where are we journeying to? So for example, in your business, I mean, if you think about this very, podcast we're on, you have a clear sense of the destination, the type of podcast you want to have, who the audience are that you want to speak to. And then that will determine, for example, how you run the podcast, who you invite as guests, what the conversation's about. Okay. If somebody wants to, I mean, storytelling is such a strong part of your work, but if somebody wanted to not talk about storytelling, they wouldn't be on your podcast. So that's a really good example of how, the work is done in setting the framework and the direction of what we do. And then the support, and that's often some of the consultancy work I do with people. But then the support and some of the coaching that I do with them, either as groups or teams, is actually to work out, okay, so how do we, as the people we are, how do we get to and move towards our destination? And that might be coaching. They may need training because there may be things, it may be just about, some advisory, some support. Ultimately, for you to travel to where you want to get to, whether it's as one person, as a team, or a whole organization, what you need is the specific mindset, the skill set, and the habits that you need to help you travel there, travel well, and reach the destination.
Hmm. Now, I'm sort of curious. Now, you do talk with a lot of people, and you also use story as instrument in your business. I can
Yeah,
see that.
yeah,
I can really
yes,
feel that. Now, when you talk to people, when you interview them, because storytelling is very powerful,
yes,
it basically helps you to penetrate the wall that the people set up around themselves,
yes,
so that people don't know. Everybody set up wall. But when you are able
yes,
to use storytelling very well, you can penetrate into that wall and stay with the person inside their own wall and therefore able to work with them.
yes,
So it is not surprising, therefore, now that the psychologists, the one that we know and the one that we will still know tomorrow, they are expert in storytelling because they need to take the
yes,
key and unlock your mind. All right. So
yes.
the question I'm trying to ask you, Laura, is when you look at people, what do you
Hmm.
see in them that is making them being able to lead themselves, being able to be strategic, either in business or so that they are looking at every shiny thing around them instead of focusing on the limited energy that they have because they have limited energy. You don't have enough
Yes,
energy to do it all. What do you think is
no.
responsible for that based on the people that you interview, the people that you work with, the people that you talk to?
One of the most important things I work on with people at the beginning is to help them understand the power of their stories, and that's where their power in leadership lies. And rather than trying to hide their stories or trying to fit somebody else's idea of what their story should be or how they should be, that if they build their leadership based on their power, the stories are the foundations of that. Because that's the one thing that you're absolutely the best expert on. There is no expert in the room beyond you and your own story. And I think it's very easy for us to not tell our stories or not use our stories and recognize them as the power that we have. And what happens with that is that we start not being a leader as we are leaders, but we start mimicking or trying to do it like somebody else. Um, and what's worse is that we then, in companies and organizations, see leader after leader after leader, they all start looking like clones of each other. And if we don't tell our stories, nobody else will speak them for us. And the best thing that can happen is that, you know, somebody else might tell our stories and tell it wrong. And the worst thing that can happen is they don't tell our stories at all, and we are silenced in that space. So we've all got stories to tell, and it's our duty to tell those stories through how we lead, through who we work with, through the partnerships and the business that we do, through how we carry ourselves. Sometimes telling your story isn't always about sitting down and recounting what's happened to you. It's in every fiber of your being. As we said right at the beginning, the body keeps count.
Uh, I really appreciate that. That is an important point. You see, at a certain point in your narration, you said silence. Keep silent because you didn't tell your story. And perhaps some other persons also believe that your story is worthless because, after all, if it was important, you would have said it. Therefore, nobody cared about your story because you didn't care about it. Therefore, in your place in this world, it becomes void. It becomes empty.
Yes.
Now, I want
Yeah.
somebody to take a moment to reflect on that your entire existence become nothing. And of course, I'm not
Hmm.
saying now that you are going to become God, but of course, come on, take some time to demonstrate that you have been here. You
Absolutely.
see, research shows that since humanity show up on Earth, since we show up on Earth as species, there have been about 170 billion of us. That includes
Yes.
8 billion people on Earth today. Now, why I usually quote this in my story here is that I am saying that each of these 170 billion people is a unicorn.
Absolutely.
Not even the entire universe have the power to recreate who you are just now. It will take
No.
millions of years of evolution for you to show up again the way you are. People don't know how complex that process is. Which is
Yes.
to say that
Yes.
you are a miracle. You are the
Absolutely.
best
As we
specimen. Yeah,
said,
please go on.
right at the beginning when we were talking about genetics, even identical twins don't have the same genetic makeup. There is nobody else like you. You're not one in a million, you're one in 8 billion at this moment in time. And nobody, not even your closest member of your family, your twin is the same as you are.
I'm keeping silent so that somebody can listen.
Yeah.
What if we could understand that, we could deploy that? Okay, now I'm saying deploy intentionally. We could deploy
Hmm.
that story in our business, in our way of
Yeah.
life, in our leadership. What would that mean? What difference would that mean?
What it means is if you accept that you are uniquely made, it means that the thoughts, the ideas, the impressions, the contributions that you make cannot be made exactly the same by anybody else. That there is something in you that has the capacity to make a unique contribution to this world, to your business, to your profession, to your family, and to yourself.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Now, I want you to take a moment to tell the people how they can reach out to you. They have listened to you to this moment and it has become very emotional. I know we could go on like that for a very long time, but I want you to come back
Yeah.
again. That is why I'm saying that now. I want you to come back again because there is a lot we haven't discussed. But
Absolutely.
tell people how they can reach out to you and benefit from your business. Here, we're not ashamed to advertise us. Advertise who you are in this short
Absolutely.
moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm Laura Serrant. You can look me up. I'm the only person on the internet with my name. So if you Google me, you will find me. You can also email me on laura@lauraserrant.com. And you can follow me on Instagram on Laura Serrant Limited. Regular LinkedIn podcasts and connections on there as well, so you can see me. And interestingly, we're talking about telling our stories. You can listen to me, more of my. I have my own podcast on the usual podcast platforms, and it's called Speaking for Ourselves.
That's lovely. That's lovely. We should take time to speak about that.
Yeah, we have so much to speak about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lara. You've been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure here talking with you.
It's been a pleasure for you. And if I can just say to everybody, listen, above all, be kind to yourselves.
That's so beautiful. I can't add anything to that. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Okay.
you.